Hello and welcome to your flagship political show, Politics Today. I'm Kayode Okikelu, sitting in for Seun Okinbaloye here in Lagos. Now, the goal on the program tonight is simple. We'll be linking two very important components in governance, and by so doing, hopefully help you, the electorate, cut through all of the flurry of activities and intrigues going on now, and help you keep your eye on the ball. We're connecting the dots between politics and policies, because politicking that won't yield the right policies to make life better for the people is merely a waste of time. And time, they say, is of the essence. We can't afford to waste any more time as a nation. So brace up for tonight's conversation. But first, let's continue our countdown to the 2023 elections. As at now, we are 74 days away from the 2023 general elections, what will be potentially the seventh of its kind in Nigeria's fourth republic. So we'll keep counting down. But let's turn our attention to the electoral umpire, to election management itself. INEC is saddled with the conduct of the coming elections, and a day that was meant to be a day of joy for a lot of people who had registered for their PVC. Today was meant to see the commencement of permanent voter cards collection, but it was hard hours before daybreak as the Imo State headquarters of INEC was attacked by gunmen around 3 a.m. today. Well, the gunmen, numbering about 10, set ablaze some part of the Imo State INEC HQ and an official utility vehicle. But the police are said to have confronted them, leading to the death of 3 of the suspected attackers. However, one policeman lost his life. Well, INEC says there was no casualty on its commission and no critical election materials were damaged in the attack. By the way, this is a third in 2 weeks in Imo State. Its local government offices in Orlu had been attacked on December the 1st. The one in Oru West local government area was attacked 3 days later. Well, the Imo State governor, Hope Uzodinma, believes it is politically motivated, but didn't offer more information, perhaps, on possible investigations. Take a listen.
I've continuously said that what is happening in Imo State is politically contrived. Some people who think that they can win election, yet they don't want election. How would they then win? INEC does not need this distraction at this point and stage of our elections. INEC should be supported by all and sundry. But contrary to that, we now see people creating distractions here and there, attacking innocent people. Why INEC? That is the big question. And if we now put 1 and 2 together, recollecting that some people have threatened that Imo State will be ungovernable and there will be no elections in Imo State. That is their attempt to achieve their purpose. But I think police is prepared, security agencies are ready, and there will be elections by the grace of God. The level of resistance and how prepared our security agencies are, to the extent that majority of those who came on this mission, some are lying critically ill, some are neutralized, and then the other ones that flew with bullet wounds. And the police is ever committed. Other security agencies, sister agencies are also committed.
Now, what is even more worrisome, particularly for INEC, is the fact that that office is located in the center of the state capital between a court and the state secretariat. Well, INEC says there is currently a systematic attack on its assets across the country because offices of the commission in Osun and Ogun states have also been attacked by gunmen in the past month, with several permanent voter cards and other electoral items destroyed. We'll keep our eyes on that one. But let's turn our attention to party politics, the internal intrigues. And today saw some mild drama, if you may, play out in Benue State. Another page in the long-drawn impasse between the presidential candidate of the PDP and the leadership on the one hand, and the Governor Wike-led Integrity Group on the other. Well, the Makurdi Airport in Benue State was a staging area where the presidential candidate of the PDP, Mr. Atiku Abubakar, was billed to land on his way to neighboring Nasarawa State. But just before he landed, the Benue State Governor Samuel Otom arrived at the airport, and many thought he was there to receive Mr. Abubakar. And apparently not, because when Governor Otom arrived at the airport, he embraced the vice presidential candidate, Governor Ifeanyi Okowa, who arrived earlier than Mr. Atiku. Quite all right, but not without asking, so you people will come to my state without telling me?
Excellent. Excellent. Good morning.
But that was as far as the welcome went, because Governor Samuel Otom then proceeded to welcome Governor Nyesom Wike of Rivers State, who is seen leader of the G5. And you understand that, I mean, this has been a long-drawn battle. So he goes there to welcome Governor Nyesom Wike instead. And afterwards, both men, after embracing, they got into their vehicles and left. Men walked on the tarmac and eventually left without welcoming Mr. Atiku Abubakar, who decided to fly to Benue State because he could not secure a landing clearance in Nasarawa State, where his presidential campaign was to hold. He was eventually welcomed by his running mate, Governor Ifeanyi Okowa, who had arrived earlier on. So there you see the welcome dance for the PDP presidential candidate. Yes, intrigues, as you would expect, judging from what had played out in the aftermath of the primaries of the PDP. But fast forward to the campaign rally in Nasarawa State, Mr. Atiku Abubakar promised to uplift the infrastructure in Nasarawa State if voted into office. Some days back, he was in the nation's capital, Abuja, campaigning as well. So this is in continuation of the PDP's presidential campaign. Well, I've given you some insight into some of the intrigues that played out today. Let's bring you some more political stories. Here's your political roundup.
The presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Atiku Abubakar, is assuring the people of Nasarawa State that his administration will keep to all promises contained in his manifesto if voted as president in 2023. Addressing supporters at a campaign rally in Nasarawa, Mr. Atiku urged Nigerians to vote the ruling All Progressives Congress out of power and salvage the country from collapse. He says if elected president, he will improve on road infrastructure that will link Nasarawa with other states. The presidential candidate of the African Action Alliance, Mr. Omoyele Sowore, has announced an alliance with the Abdulmajid Dauda-led People's Redemption Party ahead of the 2023 general elections. Sowore, who announced the merger at a news conference in Abuja, says the exercise aims at wresting political power at the center in 2023 and beyond. Asked if the presidential candidate of the People's Redemption Party, Kola Abiola, is part of the alliance, Mr. Sowore says he is not in alliance with the PRP, but is an appendage of the ruling All Progressives Congress or the People's Democratic Party.
We are in alliance with Aminu Kano's version of the PRP.
The national chairman of the African Democratic Congress, Professor Ralph Mosu, has expressed optimism that the appellate court will revalidate the candidature of the party's governorship candidate in Ogun State and others removed by the Independent National Electoral Commission. He was speaking in Abeokuta, the Ogun State capital, while addressing journalists and party officials at the party secretariat. Mr. Mosu described the judgment of the Abeokuta Federal High Court as a temporary setback for the party, saying that victory is on the way. The national chairman, however, asked voters in the state to use their vote as a weapon to defeat the ruling All Progressives Congress in the state.
We must re-strategize and move on. We move forward in order to lead.
Ahead of the 2023 general elections, stakeholders in the ruling APC are optimistic that the party will work collectively to mobilize support for their presidential candidate, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. The Director General of the defunct Rotimi Amici Presidential Campaign Organization, Senator Ali Ndume, and Lieutenant General Tukur Buratai, retired, says all party members are working towards actualizing the emergence of Bola Ahmed Tinubu and Kashim Shettima as President and Vice President in the February 2023 general elections. Speaking at the flag-off of Professor Babagana Zulum's second-term campaign rally in Maiduguri, the duo insists the party is supreme and the interest of the country supersedes any personal ambition. Ahead of the 2023 general elections, Nigerians are being called upon to support and join hands with the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Mr. Peter Obi, to rescue the country from its present situation. The spokesman of the Obidati campaign organization, Mr. Yunus Atanko, made the call in Lokoja at a press conference ahead of the party in Kogi State. According to him, Peter Obi and his running mate Yusuf Baba Ahmed has the capacity to end the insecurity challenges facing the country. The Imo State government, through the Ministry of Digital Economy and e-Government, has recruited about 5,000 youth for the first phase of the State Youth Empowerment Program tagged Skill Up Imo project. During the official flag-off of the empowerment program in Owerri, the Imo State capital, Governor Hope Uzodinma says the aim of the program is to reduce the level of unemployment amongst the youth in the state by harnessing the potentials of Imo youth in taking advantages embedded in the digital world. The governor, who also took a tour of the facility for the training, says the government is partnering with varieties of tech giants within and outside Nigeria. Vendors in the tech industry such as groomed the youth to offer digital services for direct foreign investment.
Once you are one of those that have graduated from this exercise, you will have the equipment to start your life.
Yes, indeed, very eventful day in the world of politics, and even gets more interesting. To our agenda for tonight's show, we're connecting politics with the policies. So picture politics as what goes on in the factory, and then policies as the end product. The quality of the end product is always dependent on the production process itself, this time the politicking. So we're starting off with the end product, which is a series of policies recently introduced by the federal government, the latest of which is scheduled to take off from early next year. I'm talking about the revised cash withdrawal policy, and that's coming on the heels of the Naira redesign, the recent redesign that was announced for 3 denominations of the Naira. And tonight, we take a cursory look at this policy. What does it say? A number of things the policy says, mainly. Let's just refresh, the memories of Nigerians, just in case you're wondering, what is this about? First, it says maximum cash withdrawal over the counter by individuals and corporates per week is 100,000 naira for individuals and 500,000 naira for corporates or organizations. So that's a major part of that recent policy that was introduced. And of course, withdrawal above these limits attract 5% and 10% processing fees, respectively. There's also the part that only 200 naira denominations will be in ATMs, 200 naira and below. There's also the maximum cash withdrawal via POS of 20,000 naira daily. And, well, the CBN goes further to say, in compelling circumstances, well, not exceeding once a month, by the way, cash withdrawals shall not exceed 5 million for individuals, 10 million for corporates. And again, that attracts the 5 and 10% processing fees. And there's also the layer of, different due diligence and information that will be required, BVN, notarized customer declaration, even approval in writing by the MD CEO of the bank authorizing the withdrawal. It's so much, but let's help you to break this down, condense this, and just make it as simple as possible so you can see the quality or otherwise of the policies that come out of the politicking. We're joined on the program tonight by a member of the National Assembly, Senator Matthew Orogide. Joins us live from our Abuja studio. He's the chairman, Senate Committee on Public Accounts. He represents Edo South in the upper chamber. Good evening, and thank you for joining us on the program, Senator.
Thank you very much, Kayode. Thank you for inviting me here.
Yeah, well, it's good to have you. And I imagine a lot of Nigerians who have had some days maybe to internalize this latest policy, and they're thinking, let's project ahead. What does this mean? How will this affect me as an individual? But I'd like to start off from the constituency that concerns you, which is the Senate. some members raised concerns about this new policy, and it was agreed that, well, we have some nominees of the central bank coming for screening. We'll raise these issues with them. So I'd like you to tell Nigerians by way of update, were they taken to task on this recent policy, and what was their response?
Oh, once again, thank you very much, Kayode. Indeed, it's a privilege for me, to come before, the Nigerian public. Let me say that right away, CBN, by virtue of the statutes establishing it, has the exclusive preserve, to turn up policies and, of course, implementation of policies, monetary policies, on behalf of the country. That is in the Establishment Act. So if you look at it statutorily, yes, their responsibility, to come up, with policies like this, and then, of course, to see to its implementation. But as you know, law is made, for man, and not the other way around. If the policy as enunciated by CBN is not meeting the aspirations of the people, or we think that it's too draconian and too strange to, contemporary commercial activities, then of course we have to do some amendments and see to its review. But I want to say that right away, yes, since this matter broke on the floor of the Senate, there were contributions that were made by members. And of course, where it was rested was that the two directors whose names, had come through executive communication from Mr. President, where the members of the committee were really asked to interrogate them on this issue and, come up, with a recommendation to the Senate. So the Senate, let me put it very clearly, has not taken a decision on this matter. And we are still waiting for the committee to report back this week, on their findings or whatever, contributions were made by those two directors, that were screened by the committee for confirmation of their appointment. Well, we all know what it is. We know what it is. What is strange is, the peculiarity of our situation. Cashless policy exists in other climes, and we know how it works. But in our own system, where there are a lot of contending issues that probably will not make us actualize the objective, then in which case we have to domesticate it within the workability of our own exigencies, our situation. So I think that is the fear.
Right.
Yes, a lot of businesses in Nigeria, they fall within what we describe as MSMEs, the small, and medium, enterprises, that really are equally outside, of the banking system. And because they're outside of the banking system, how do we bring them? How do we bring them in? How do we make their businesses to thrive? The ordinary person around the corner that is operating, a POS machine, you are saying you can only get 20,000. We envisaged that, this business is certainly will suffer some, setback. And if anything, that will affect, the totality of our own economic activities in Nigeria. So that is the fear. And if you remember clearly the contribution of the Senate President on the floor on that day, he just said it that, yes, there's really nothing wrong about it, but to put it all of a sudden on Nigerian people that, we too have to look at it, let it meet the exigencies of, of our own, of our own time. So that is where we are. Until they report back, then we'll know really what it is.
Okay.
But let me equally
because
say
there was
that,
a sense, pardon me, Senator, let me just come in at that point.
At the commission hearing, at the committee level, even
right,
the
Senator, if you can hear me.
The CBN director that will be confirmed mentioned very clearly, and I think the CBN governor too corroborated that when he visited the president in Daura, I think last week. He said, look, we are amenable to whatever changes, that will meet, the desire of our people. But that is not to say that it is not a policy, that we really must embark on. So They have said that yes, we can do some amendments to it, but to throw it, away altogether, that one is not possible.
Okay, so let me come in at this point, Senator. Let me just come in at this point because it's been reported. If you can hear me, pardon me. It was reported, the sense a lot of people got was that of that meeting or the screening of sorts that the Senate had with those directors, that maybe the Senate was now convinced, or at least the committee that conducted that screening was now convinced based on that policy. But you say that they have not gotten back to the House, so that is not true. Am I right? All right.
Not gotten back.
Okay, so let's get to the nitty-gritty of it now.
The decision has to be that of this.
Of the Senate, of course. So let's maybe help Nigerians understand what to expect from this process so they don't maybe have false hope or false expectations. Let's manage the expectations. How much of a change can the National Assembly, Senate, House of Reps have on this policy, seeing that, as you said, you started by saying the CBN has its right, based on the law that sets it up, to actually make these policies and pronouncements. Can you, in any case, in any eventuality, maybe suggest a change and push the CBN to change this? Let's just help Nigerians understand that. Can you do anything to change this?
I mean, I want to assure Nigerians very, definitely that, when the committee submits its reports, somehow, I've had interaction, with, one or two members of the committee, and I think what they are going to suggest to us really is going to be amendments, to the figures, that were mentioned, whether it is 20,000, 100,000, for individuals and 500,000 for corporate entities. Well, I believe there's going to be some adjustments. Certainly, there's going to be some adjustments.
How would you achieve that?
CBN alluded to it through, the governor of Central Bank himself, that, they are certainly going to make some changes, at least to meet up with the exigency of our times.
I mean, how will you achieve that, Senator? I'm quite curious. Help Nigerians understand without, infringing on the law that sets up the CBN to be independent in its duties. So how would you actually do that? Because CBN, as you said earlier on, is in its rights. They can do that without having to lean or, wait on anyone to make that decision or suggest it to them.
Well, the policy is not going to be thrown, just, thrown overboard, not going to be thrown away just like that. Cashless policy is what obtains, in very civilized societies and all of that. So, we're in a global world, and Nigeria trying to get to it, but it's just the limits that we are talking about now. CBN too has prepared itself, from what we heard, from the CBN governor himself, that they had tried it before on 2 occasions, but that, this same resistance that came, from the public was what caused it that they had to drop. And of course, the implementation had actually started, if you remember, from the time of Sanusi Lamido Sanusi. They took some states, thinking about 5 states and Abuja, for the experimentation. And that one has still been going on, you couldn't withdraw more than 500,000 naira, over the counter, here in Abuja. But in the states like Edo, you can, as an individual, you can still draw up to about 2 million, 3 million from your account. And then corporate entities about 5 million or 10 million. So, to some extent, it had begun in some of the states,
Right.
So I just believe Central Bank knows, that at least the desperation and the peculiarity of our times, there will be need for these limits, And I believe the Senate, the committee will recommend to the Senate, yes, even though we are going to accept the policy, but the limits, they're a bit low. And I believe, there will be increments, in the limits. That is what can be withdrawn.
When this was announced,
what of course can be, gotten from POS machines,
right?
And activities, at those very low levels.
When this was announced originally and it was deliberated upon at, both houses, reports had it and captioned it that, politicians move against CBN's policy. And, it had that sense that politicians were against this, of which members of the National Assembly are politicians as well, even though we've seen those arguing for and against this. And you have mentioned the MSMEs, the POS operators. As someone who represents people, at least you feel the pulse of people. So what limits then would you be pushing to the CBN in terms of the daily withdrawals, perhaps for POS operators? Maybe you'll be asking for a special policy for them to cover their business needs. So what will be the recommendation to CBN in terms of the limit beyond 20,000?
Let me say this, whether it is policy or whether it is a law that is in the making, there is always, the inclusion of, the public, and I know that, the people we represent too are going to talk to us from our different constituencies. It's not just going to be a thing that we're going to do one day. When that report comes in, of course, the matter will still be brought, to the floor of the Senate, and it will be debated. And, of course, we probably have to have a time, to get feedbacks, from our constituents. And then, of course, we come up with it. Certainly, as a committee too, Committee on Banking, Insurance, they certainly will invite the CBN, and, of course, we'll find common grounds on this matter.
The question is particularly, what limits would you be looking to at least procure for those MSMEs in terms of the daily limits, so that, the POS, for example, can be able to do their business outside of those limits, perhaps?
Let me say this, we are really not going into the reasons, the objective of the policy. People, have enunciated different reasons, what is supposed to achieve for us, apart from, changing, the way, we do things, particularly when it comes to cash transactions and all of that, in the face of it, if it is security or wanting to stop, people from, maybe doing one evil thing or the other, kidnapping, election rigging, or buying votes and all of that. But what I want to say is this, we are looking at it now from the prism of, the very low people who conduct, businesses or commercial activities. We too must be able to strike a balance. We still need to include them. We need to find, a common ground. That will say, okay, instead of maybe 20,000 naira for POS, we can take it to 50,000. But that figure again has to be determined from interaction with the people who are involved in these activities. But for us to, as a Senate, certainly we are not just going to fix, fixed figures, for CBN. And whatever is suggested, well, of course, these things have to be brought before the CBN, coming up with a policy to say, okay, this is what we can take, this is what we cannot take. And then we say, okay, this is what is expected, by the people. But I think we will find a common ground. As a Senate, I don't think we are really going to come up to say, this is what we take, these are the figures or these are the figures we are going to take without recourse to our constituents.
Right.
Senator. Consult with them. And then, of course, we'll come and then we say, this is what we think will be fair.
Right. As a politician, I'd like to know if you feel targeted, by extension, perhaps your colleagues as well, in various interactions by this policy. First, the Naira redesign, and this latest one, because it's coming off the back of reports of, lush funds being lodged, warehoused by politicians in order to prosecute the coming election. So from a politician's point of view, especially because it's also been reported that politicians are moving against this latest policy, do you maybe feel targeted by the CBN?
Not at all. As a person, not at all. In as much as I don't want to stand in gap, for politicians, I just believe, this issue of cash transactions, it has been with us from time, when it comes to, commercial activities, with our people. If you probably go to some of our markets, you have a lot of cash volume, more than you have. If you go to Onitsha market, you go to Aba market, you go to Balogun markets and all these big markets, where people transact, businesses in gold and what have you that cost, so much, huge sums of money. These people already, know that, yes, they need cash to do a lot of things. It's not only, targeted at, politicians. For me, I believe, yes, the redesign, if it's going to stop vote buying, why not? If the redesign is going to stop, paying huge ransoms to kidnappers and bandits and what have you, why not? If it's going to stop vote buying, why not? But at least let us take it as, a policy that we want to put in place, that will serve the greater majority of our people's interests, and I believe it's not targeted at me. I mean, I don't have anything to. I've been running elections, and I really have not. I've not had time, that where I have to distribute huge sums of money to people. And again, I'm not even running elections this time around. So I am just in for a good policy that will benefit the greater majority of our people. That's it.
Right. I'd also like to know if you share the same, if you agree with those who think that this gives government more control, it gives government more oversight, in fact, maybe undue influence on people's funds, their personal funds or, corporate funds. And some might be saying that maybe this is not entirely good, having that much control and oversight by government. After all, they say it is their money. I wonder what your thoughts on that is as well. Do you think that perhaps that's a way to look at it?
Well, first, let me say the individual rights, really cannot be trampled upon. The policy like this, redesigning your currency, if it's going to happen, and you are telling people that they must bring their money to the banks, in some other climes, it's an infringement of their fundamental rights. A person who has money has a right to keep his money in the house, not in the bank. If you go to America and you tell them that, look, you must bring your money in, they will tell you, anytime I bring in $1 to the bank, you can change it. But if you go to take me 10 years to bring all my money to the bank, then that's the time you have to change all the money that I have in my possession. I've earned this money, is my own. But in Nigeria, it's the other way. You have to, are given time limits, you must bring in all this money into the bank, CBN must change them. And again, to a large extent, people, it's an infringement of my fundamental rights. I have a right to say, this is the time I'm going to bring my money to the bank to change. But what I will say is, just like we mentioned before, if not that the elections are around the corner, and of course I think that was the position of the Senate too. Yes, we agree with CBN, let's redesign our currency, okay, but the only thing is the time. With time, people get acquainted with new policies and they walk up and make up their mind that, yes, we are going to accept this, but to put it stricto sensu within the frame of, very limited time frame, certainly it's going to put people in a frenzy. Everybody is going to, be haggling and rushing and all of that, and taking the time, into consideration, that between now and January 31st, it has to go. We have not started now. We're going to start on the 15th of December to start sending our money, sending the old currencies back to the bank, and then but you can be rest assured, when you have a large population of people, about 200 million, everybody coming to the bank between, 15th of December and January 21st. We're actually talking within 45 days.
Right.
So I just hope too that, since the information has been passed, a lot of Nigerians too will get ready, to exchange, their old currency for the new ones.
So we're winding down now, Senator. So it will be very interesting to see the debate on the floor when eventually this happens. Hopefully, I imagine this happens this week, right? Am I right?
Yes, hopefully, maybe from tomorrow.
Okay, from tomorrow. So what extension would you then be suggesting?
Submit their report tomorrow.
Okay, so what extension would you be suggesting, since you think maybe January the 31st is too close? What extension would you be suggesting?
Well, for the currency redesign, I think we have all agreed, the resolution that was passed by Senate, even though there were, decent voices, eventually at least was voted upon that yes, it's the exclusive preserve of CBN, to redesign our currencies within its competencies, within its statutory function. We had actually done that. I don't think the issue of currency redesign, can be changed. But the one of, maximum cash withdrawals and all of that, I think it is the one that we have not taken a decision on. And if, of course, the committee recommends this is, what, of course, they found out, the Senate is still at liberty, to invite the CBN governor.
So would that be after the election? Would you be pushing for an extension for after the election or still before the election?
If it becomes exigent, why not? If it's after the election and a lot of people will find out they have not still be able to change their currencies, well, of course. What is important that you make laws for the comfort of the people. If eventually you find out that the people's interest is not being satisfied, then of course you have to, you have to call it back and do the needful.
All right, we have to anchor at this point. Clearly, the coming days will be interesting, but we'd like to thank you so much for your insights. Senator Matthew Oride is the chairman, Senate Committee on Public Accounts. He's also a representative of Edo South. Thank you for your time on the program tonight.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Well, we'll take a break now, and when we return, an analysis of the programs and chances of the African Democratic Party, the African Democratic Congress, and its candidate, Mr. Dumebi Kachikwu. Don't forget, we're focusing on the politics right now. Stay with us. The African Democratic Congress, ADC, is one of the first few parties you'll see on the ballot paper on election day, and that's based on its alphabetical edge. But the question is just how visible and sellable is the party, its candidate, and manifesto in this campaign season. We're joined tonight on the program by the presidential candidate of the ADC, Mr. Dumebi Kachikwu, is also the founder of Roots TV. He joins us live from our Abuja studio. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Kachikwu. It's good to have you on the program.
Thanks for having me.
I know your view, coming off the conversation we had earlier, I know your view on the CBN policy is that maybe government is distracting from real issues, but just to begin with, what more do you think the government can hide, really? The inflation figures are there, unemployment, the rates are there, poverty rate is there, 133 million Nigerians are poor. So is there any other thing you believe is being hidden from Nigerians with these recent policies from the CBN?
It's very simple. A few weeks ago, a lot of people didn't notice that there was this fake news going around town that, from some news organization purported to be Reuters, but it wasn't Reuters. And that news report said that the US government was withdrawing the dollars in circulation in Africa because of corruption and because of politicians. And as a result of that, the Bureau de Change people stopped collecting dollars, and that's why the Naira seemed to appreciate for a period of time. It's not gotten back to the 800 and above since then. What was happening prior to this? There was a run on the banks. We had a lot of the middle class leaving Nigeria, taking out their money from money deposit banks, and they were leaving Nigeria. People didn't have any trust in the economy anymore, and people were taking out their money, and people taking out their money, buying foreign exchange, and leaving Nigeria in droves. So what the CBN has done is what you call wag the dog. Essentially do something to distract the attention of the people from what the real issues are. They don't want a run on the banks, because a run on the banks will lead to panic in the financial system, and it will lead to a total collapse of the economy, which is why they've come up with this policy. And what does it do? It restricts you from taking your money out of the banking system, which is reversing what was going on. So check this out. If you see what happened in countries like Greece, Lebanon, Zimbabwe, Venezuela, they did the same thing. When economies are failing, central banks restrict access to money. That's all the CBN has done. So the annoying thing for me is when you attribute it to politics, people storing money in their vaults, and people vote buying and what have you. I'm not saying that does not exist. That exists. But do you know what it means to store 5 billion naira or 10 billion naira, or to even move 100 million naira in cash? The volume of that money, the bullion vans required to move that. So, but Nigerians, anytime you have any news report that seems not favorable to the big man, to the political class, people start clapping and people don't look deeply into what's going on. Unfortunately, what's happening is that we are using cosmetic measures to address the failings in our economy instead of tackling it headlong and coming up with solutions that will ginger, that will bring back our economy to life.
So let's dovetail into your own plans, your policies. I mean, I started off the program by saying that's the goal of politics, to have sound policies to better the lives of the people. So let's maybe envision your first few months in office if you were to win this election, and this is particularly on the economy, the issues you have raised off of this recent CBN policies. What will be your major key decisions? I mean, that's tautology anyway, but it just goes to show how important this is. What will be those major decisions you will make regarding the economy off of those issues that you say you have discovered?
It's very simple. We need to export more. We need to have import substitution. So we need to support businesses that are exporting so we can bring in scarce foreign exchange. So we need to support them with loans, with grants, and whatever to support those businesses. If you were to ask the CBN governor in the last 4 years how many businesses Nigerian banks supported in exporting, you will find that the numbers are very low. I happened to read yesterday that they now plan to support businesses of about 500 billion naira. That's good. I mean, this they should have done years ago. That probably would have saved our economy from the chaos that we're witnessing right now. So I will support exports. I will support businesses that are engaged in production which reduces what we are importing. I will also support the service-based industries. If you take, for example, tourism. Nigerians are going to Ghana for tourism. We heard today that the Ghanaian cedi has gained against the dollar. Imagine the coastal front we have in Nigeria if we had beachfront resorts. We'll have people trooping to Nigeria for tourism. We need to do that. We need to support agriculture. Agriculture should no longer be something we all say, oh yes, Nigeria needs to stop being a monofocal economy and we need to start looking at agriculture. What should we do about agriculture? We need to take agriculture from subsistence farming to agripreneurship. We need to start looking at the business of agriculture. Farmers are some of the richest people all over the world. Nigerian farmers are some of the poorest people. So what should we do with the farmers? Support them with farm service centers close to them. We need to give them the tools, implements. We need to have agro-processing parks so that whatever they produce, they have people who are direct off-takers. We need to now start exporting finished food products. We use that. We have to look at the farm-to-fork model within Nigeria and export finished food products across Africa and to the rest of the world. We need to start again looking at healthcare. Nigerians are going to India and other parts of the world for medical tourism. Why can't medical tourism happen in Nigeria? We need to reverse the ugly trend where we have our doctors, our medical professionals living in Nigeria. We need to bring them back. Most economies all over the world, everybody understands that for you to keep your economy strong, you need to focus on the middle class. Unfortunately, in Nigeria, we've left our middle class unattended, and they are the people who sustain the economy. Those are the people who are leaving to do a master's overseas, who are leaving to find greener pastures overseas. We need to start building world-class communities all over Nigeria, not just Lagos, Abuja, and Port Harcourt. We need to start ensuring that cities all over Nigeria are world-class cities that can attract the middle class so that people don't have to leave their communities, their states, and everybody headed to Lagos and Abuja and suffocating the infrastructure we have in those places. We need to also start seeing how we can support SMEs in Nigeria. Right. SMEs also form part of the middle class. In Nigeria, the hardest thing for any SME to get is a loan. For you to get a loan in Nigeria today, you find it's extremely difficult. Sometimes you have to produce your parents. We need to make it easier for these people. I was just listening to something today about Kenya, something that they call a hustle fund, where Kenyans were able to access small loans for them to do startup businesses or for them to get by. We need to do things like this in Nigeria to help our people. Or finally, we need to understand in Nigeria that... Sorry.
Yeah, pardon me. I just wanted to comment because you've talked about quite a number of things regarding the economy, but it's always good to maybe try to differentiate what plans you have as a candidate and what is already playing out, perhaps in this current administration, or what previous governments have tinkered with so Nigerians can weigh them. For this current government, I know the CBN had announced this RT200 policy, and recently the CBN governor was saying that about $4.9 billion had been repatriated into the country by non-oil exporters in 2022. That's this year so far. He says that's higher than the $3 billion that was done last year. So for you, what would your goal be in terms of the repatriation of those foreign currencies, or at least forex in dollars and all of that, to boost our the value of the naira, different from what this government is already doing?
$4.2 billion is a joke considering the Nigerian nation. A country of 200 million people, where you have 1 in every 4 black persons all over the world happens to be a Nigerian, so most people say. And we're talking about repatriating $4 billion. The Indian economy is supported by Indians outside of India. And we're talking about $4 billion. That's a drop in the ocean compared to what's possible.
So what would you project
Do
then?
you know that countries like the Republic of Benin, Ghana, that they have clearly cut policies to export labor, low-cost labor? So in Nigeria, we have people who are doing what we call carpentry, electrical work, POP, and what have you, from all these countries. It's a clear policy from their government to export this labor across Africa. And these people are repatriating funds back to their country. In Nigeria, we have all these people. We won't even begin to train them, not talk of exporting these people across the rest of Africa. Yes, we are trading in different parts of Africa, but we need to start exporting skill sets.
Okay, quite a number of issues.
Not just top-notch skill sets, but low skill sets that will help our economy.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of issues to raise with you, but just quickly, if you say $4 billion, for example, is a joke, what would your goal be?
My goal would be to triple that.
So that would be what, $12 billion in a year?
So tell you what, right? I just mentioned to you that the Indian economy is supported by
it's okay.
Indian
I just wanted to get the figure to be sure. I understand that. It's just to be sure. Do you mean $12 billion? So we can touch on the politics part of this, because lots of issues to raise with you.
Yes.
$12 billion.
Correct, yes. $12 billion. And when people get a sense that their funds are protected within the country, people won't have a problem repatriating their funds back to Nigeria.
All right, Mr. Kachikwu, let's talk about the politics of things. I mean, your party has gone through its fair share of issues, and we have just 2 minutes to maybe explore this or less. Have you been able to resolve the leadership issues? Because, we just saw Mr. Nwosu speaking, carrying on as the chairman of the party. I know that you've had Mrs. Akwashiki also saying interim leader. So what is the situation with that? Because I know that that's going to impact either positively or negatively on your candidacy. So we have that issue within the party. INEC so far seems to have played a diabolical role in how it's managing this issue, but the issue is before the courts. The courts will shortly rule on this, and hopefully will put this matter to bed. Again, we have to thank you so much for your time. Lots of issues to raise, but we'll definitely be doing this in the coming days. After all, we have 74 days to the coming elections. But Mr. Dumebi Kachikwu, the presidential candidate of the ADC, thank you so much for your time, and looking forward to do this again with you soonest. Thanks for having me. Well, that's been our show for tonight, everyone. The political scene gets even more intriguing. So join us tomorrow. In the meantime, I'm Kayode Okikiolu. Good night.